My first exposure, I guess, to depression, which I didn't know this is what it was, hindsight's 2020. I would say I was about 13, 14, right? I was in college learning psychology and I went, "Oh, that's what I was feeling. All right." Way back then, I had all sorts of thoughts of harming myself, of doing horrific things to myself. At the time, I didn't know it's a coping strategy. But I used to write poetry about it. So instead of physically taking, say, a razor blade to myself, I would write about it and write about what it would look like or what it would feel like if I would do that.
Welcome, everyone, to another amazing episode on the One Moment Podcast. Now, we have a very distinguished guest on the show today. And it's interesting because this individual is from Canada. And I got a very interesting story to say about Canada. Very interesting. And I've spoken about it on my personal social media, and it is hilarious. So with that being said, look, before we get started in today's show, let me just preface this. All right. We're going to be talking about mental health, substance use, suicide prevention, anything in between, right? If for some reason you are triggered as you listen to our shows or you watch our shows, please know that there are resources available. You have private practice practitioners that work in the mental health, behavioral health field. You have local crisis centers, local emergency departments that you can seek help from. You also have 988, which is the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. So again, please seek help if you need it. And everything discussed on our show, and I think her show too, is only educational and informational. It is nothing that we talk about should be construed as us giving medical or clinical advice. That is not the goal here. All right. So from Canada, and I have to know, what are your thoughts what are your thoughts on the political spectrum as it relates to the mental health, behavioral health, things like that, between politics in Canada versus the US? I might as well. I mean, this is a
I
huge
mean,
topic.
it is.
Nobody.
After you just told me we're not going to talk about 12, so I see how you go. So, uh, hello, everybody. My name is Randi-lee Bowslaugh from Canada. And well, I know here our politicians love to talk a big game, but they don't actually do anything that is helpful. So they like to talk about
Yes.
they like to talk about how they need to solve the homelessness crisis. That's their big thing right now, the homelessness crisis, but not talk about how a good chunk of them, not everybody, but a good chunk of them are homeless because of underlying mental health issues. And without addressing those, putting a roof over somebody's head isn't going to help them in the long run because at least in my neighborhood specifically, I'm looking out the window, I'm like, oh, yep, there's that person again. And not in a mean way, just unfortunately, there's certain people in my neighborhood that, yeah, they could use a roof over their head, but only if they understood that that was where they lived. And for some people with certain mental health issues, they don't. And that is a big issue happening right now. And politicians love to talk about it, love to try and throw money at it, but don't actually do anything that would be useful. I'm gonna guess that's probably similar down there.
Yes, our politicians are the same way. All talk, no action. And my biggest problem with the behavioral health field, and I don't care who gets mad about this, is, you know, we 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 have these ideas, right, that we call best practice, and so everybody practices these best practice and evidence based, but yet we're so afraid to take risk. We're so afraid to do this. We're so afraid to do that. And reality is the behavioral health field has gotten worse, right? Well, the crises has gotten worse with homelessness, drug addiction, mental health, like, and you name it.
Uh-huh.
And it bothers me to see people, get up in DC or in any country, in any state, just to give all this huge great talk, but yet, like, what are we really doing at the end of the day? And that's not just a politician's fault either. This goes back to practitioners in the behavioral health field.
Hmm.
1000%. Absolutely.
Yeah. Question for you, actually, because I've never asked this to anybody in the States. Do you guys have easy access to naloxone?
Depends on which state. I
Okay.
think because some states are more strict than others. Depends on which agency you work at and which organization you work at too.
Okay.
So
So the reason I ask, and some people might disagree with me, and that's totally fine. We totally can. We have super easy access to naloxone here, like ridiculously easy. You
mm,
go to the pharmacy. You're like, here's my health card. They're like, here you go. Here's some needles of naloxone. Um, which again sounds like a great idea. However, my personal experience, my brother died by drug overdose in 2021. Yes, 2021. When we went to his room, so he rented a room in a house. When we went there and we're looking around, trying to clean up, trying to find things to keep, the amount of naloxone needles there, used ones, was overwhelming. I had to leave the room. I went outside and I cried a bunch. Um, and it made me think the concept of naloxone is great. You can help somebody who is having a drug overdose. However, if the person with the addiction is just being like, all right, I'm getting ready for it. I know I'm about to need it. It kind of defeats the purpose. I don't have a solve for this, but I think it's an important thing for people to think about and start talking about because it's not solving a problem. It's creating a different problem with something that should be a good solution.
no, I definitely agree. I agree with harm reduction. I agree with many things as it relates to harm reduction. My concern is, and again, this isn't taken up for one side of the aisle in politics or not.
Yes.
My fear, my concern is when we look at places like California, uh, and I'm gonna pick on California for a moment,
That's
where
fine.
you
You may
can
have
walk.
to tell me why you're picking on it, though.
Yeah, well, and I'm fixing to tell you where
Okay.
you can
Sorry.
walk right down the side of the street and you have needles laying out in the parks, sidewalks, people shooting drugs on the streets, all
Oh,
of these things. And I don't want us to end up like that. Our parks should be beautiful, our sidewalks should be safe, like all of
yes.
those things. Now, I am I have conservative ideas and liberal ideas, and I guess that would be my less of a liberal idea if you look at it from a
Yes.
political perspective, because it is dangerous.
Hmm.
We're talking about 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old children, 13
Yeah.
year old children that go out to the parks and play with their friends, their siblings, other students, and things like that.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think it's creating another problem that, and then my question is how do we solve that?
Yeah. And again, I don't have the answer, and you probably don't either. I think it's going to be a collective trial and error. I think we have to try some things that maybe are outside of the box of the norm and then try to figure it out, I don't think I know there is not one answer because it is many issues, right? Like it goes back to how we started talking about homelessness. Okay, that is one issue, but what's under those issues? Trauma that people have, the lack of skills they might have based on maybe trauma they lived through, and so they weren't able to gain skills. There could be some other disabilities going on. Maybe there's some intellectual disabilities, so they don't know what to ask for, what to do either. So there's not one problem. There's many problems, and so we have to look at solutions that are integrated into lots of different health, right? And you brought it up with practitioners. I know here, um, your wait list to get a practitioner is crazy. People love to say people love to say Canada has great healthcare. No, we do not. Let me just kibosh that myth. No, we do not. We have access to an ER doctor without having to pay for them. We have access to give birth without having to pay for it. So there are certain things. When I had cancer, awesome. They took me in, they took it out, no bill after. Amazing. However, when when we needed to get our kid diagnosed, she eventually was diagnosed with autism. But when we needed to get her diagnosed, it was a fight. It was waitlist. It was up and down. It was hospital trips. When she was trying to, when she was trying to kill herself, multiple times, multiple ways, our healthcare system failed horribly. She was in there at 10 years old saying, I want to kill myself. And they said, kids who actually want to don't talk like that. So you're fine. You can go home. So no, that's not how you should be addressing a person, whether they are 10, whether they are 20, whether they are 70, if they are saying these things. And so there is a huge disconnect between people asking and receiving the help that they need. On the flip side of that, more recently, she also had another incident of suicide attempt. And so the new procedure in the region that I live is that they have something called COAST. I can't remember what it stands for. It's some acronym, but basically it's a crisis team. And so she was in the hospital overnight. When she was released the next day, COAST calls because I guess their new thing is to follow up. So she's honestly talking to this person because she wants help herself. And she's telling them, yes, I still hear voices. Yes, they're still telling me to hurt myself. So they have their duty to report. The police show up, not an ambulance, not a crisis worker. Police show up. They put her in handcuffs to take her to the hospital because they were worried about her hurting herself. There is so much wrong with what happened. So much. It is mind-boggling. At least for my daughter, because was not her first time. And I mean, it's not a good thing, but in this situation, I'm looking at the positives. She was not horrified by putting in handcuffs and into the police vehicle because she's had other episodes where we've had to deal with this. But I just kept thinking, what if this was the first time this person had reached out to this crisis line only to be put in handcuffs? They would never, ever ask for help again. And that is horrific to think about. So the disconnect is absolutely unbearable. I don't remember how we started this, but I had to get that out because it's absolutely horrific, the disconnect between people asking and wanting help and the response that they are being given.
No, I definitely agree. And I'm going to piggyback on something you said earlier, then I'm going to touch back on what you were talking about, that last piece. But like Canada, we also have wait lines and wait lists and everything else, whether it be community mental health, private practice, whether it be even with the medical field itself. There are, you might be waiting a year to get in to see a specialist. Wow. Like, it is that sad. And people think that we should have healthcare system like Canada. Well,
that won't
if
help.
Ours ain't working and yours ain't working, why would we want to make ours worse and make it more ineffective? Right?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Right. Now, I'm not saying that our system is better than yours or worse than yours different. By any means. I don't know. I've never had to. It is different. Now, I will say the way people handle suicide, I will say it's very similar. I've seen a lot of clinicians and therapists that are so afraid to work with somebody who's suicidal.
Yeah.
And I would like to think that is because it is lack of training, lack of understanding, lack of personal and professional competence, lack of, just a number of things. And when it comes to suicide, typically the way I teach is unless they have a plan and are actively engaging in it, there's no need for immediate help. There, treatment plan it, case manage it, like do these, like there's steps you can do, there's things you
Yes.
can do to help reduce those suicidal thoughts, to help reduce the intention, or I'm not going to say the intention, but the intensity of, that's the word I was
Yes,
looking
that's a
for.
good one.
There's things you can do. You can treatment plan this thing, uh, but and immediate seeking of hospital services is not always necessary. Just because a person says, hey, I am suicidal right now, I am thinking about harming myself, and I've seen it where it's created as soon as a patient says that, hey, I'm thinking about harming myself, the therapist or the provider says, oh my God, let's call 911. Let's get you to a hospital. If you don't go, I'm IVC you now. I don't know what
Hmm.
Canada calls it. Uh,
Yeah, it's 72-hour hold. Yeah.
yeah, 70. So ours is
Yeah.
IVC. Uh,
Okay.
and, it's the same thing, 72-hour hold. We have up
Yeah.
to
What do we call
72
it?
hours.
We call it forming them.
Gotcha. Ours is involuntarily commit. And so, and the patient did not need psychiatric inpatient hospitalization. They just needed somebody to actually hear what they were saying.
Yes.
And I've seen many hospitals, depending on who it is, where they would either treatment plan it, case manage it, send them back home, or they'll be afraid to take a risk. Right. And I don't mean, like, when I use the word risk, I mean like I don't, in this case, I'm using it lightly,
Yes.
that they're afraid to take a risk. And so they send them into the inpatient unit, and the inpatient unit discharges them in 24 hours because there's no need. All they needed was a referral to a mental health practitioner, or all they needed was this, and that's all they saw. And so I've seen it time and time and time again, where it's created more distrust and harm, and people less likely to seek help versus actually help. So I definitely would agree with you. It can create 100% absolutely more harm than actual good when those things happen.
Yeah. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I know handcuffing somebody asking for help is not it.
No, 100%. I mean, it's like trying to criminalize somebody just for saying, hey, I'm being suicidal right now. There's many
Exactly.
countries. Interesting fact, we did a suicidal episode back in February, I think it was.
Okay.
And come to find out, there are numerous countries who they can charge you with a crime just for having a suicidal thought.
Oh, I better
So
not
wow,
go
it
there.
blew. Right, right.
Yeah, because that was
Don't even let it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's something I told my kid after, because she was so upset that she ended up back at the hospital because she was being honest and asking for help. She's like, I wasn't even planning on doing it. I was just telling them, yes, I always have plans. I go, babe, I get it, because I also always have plans. I know exactly how I would do it if I ever got that bad again, because I've had my own times where I've been so depressed that so the plan I created for myself in my 20s, that is still in my brain. Like, that is still something that I'm like, if I ever went off my antidepressants and I, sunk down that low again, I know exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
Everybody, I shouldn't say everyone in the whole world, but you know what I mean? Like, everybody with depression or whatever who has had these thoughts, we have the plan and we know kind of what we're going to do. It's there, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean action is happening.
No, 100%. It's when I had a medication induced suicidal attempt where I was not thinking about suicide, never had thoughts of suicide. And I'm not going to say any names of the medication because I don't want to give the name a bad rep or
Mm,
be sued by the company. But it was a pretty powerful medication. And I was taking it off label per
okay.
a medical provider who said, this is research has shown yada, yada, yada. I'm like, all right, whatever, give it here. And I was trying not to use CBD because CBD
Hmm.
was effective, but when you factor in I'm in recovery, I work a professional job, like I don't want to take any
Yeah.
chances. And in the midst of an argument, and I say argument, like emotions are high, everything else, and I literally grabbed my grabbed my girlfriend and I don't mean like human girlfriend. I grabbed my girlfriend, and within a split second, I had this little voice come in my head and said, "Empty it right now." And so I literally, I wasn't even thinking about it.
Hmm.
I wasn't even thinking about it. But that medication I was on gave me extreme highs, extreme lows. And I mean, I would wake up days where as soon as I open my eyes, my first thought would be, "Oh, shoot, I ought to go to the garage and hang myself."
Yeah.
And now that I'm not taking the medication, I'm not having those thoughts. Uh, I want to live, actually. I do. And
Yeah.
I'm not knocking anybody for having these thoughts. I've been there. Mine was medication induced. Nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
Like, so, and if I were in those countries, I wouldn't be able to share that without going to jail.
And that's a major problem for seeking help. You can't seek help if you can't tell what the problem is. Oh my goodness. That is heartbreaking, actually. And that is part of, I mean, we've been talking a lot about what the problems are. That's another one of the biggest problems is that people are scared to say what's happening. So recently, um, my husband and I were talking. I was having at my day job, there's always s- stress at jobs and there's always, give and take and pull or whatever. And I generally like my job, actually a lot. And I really like everybody I work with on, 99% of the days. But there are obviously more stressful moments than others. And my husband said, he goes, hon, like, he's like, I love you. And I love you. We've been together 18 years now, so we better. But he goes, but as soon as you start telling people that you're autistic or you have depression or you have whatever, they're going to start treating you different. I'm like, in my head, I know that. And I also know that's wrong. And this is why I keep talking about it so much, because just because I have these things and I talk about these things does not mean that anyone should ever think that I'm going to randomly leave or I'm going to have to take time off, or that I'm incapable of doing the job I've been doing for 4 years. Like, this is the problem, is that we're so scared to incur, I want to say wrath, but it would be more of an underhanded kind of wrath because it's not right in your face. But we're so scared to speak up about these things when, for me, I've pretty much found my management level. I mean, there's always good days and bad days in life, but yes, I'm autistic. I have figured out coping strategies. Yes, I have depression. I've figured out coping strategies. Yes, I have PTSD. Yes, I figured out coping strategies. That does not impact my work anymore. Good days and bad days, everyone has them. But overall, we should not be scared. Not that I'm saying you have to go to your HR person and say, hey, look what I have, but we should not be scared to say these things or to own parts of ourselves because we're worried that a manager is going to use it against you, your boss, a coworker, an ex-girlfriend, for crying out loud. Like anybody, we should not be worried that people are going to use this stuff against us, because if you do not speak up about it, you cannot get help. Now, you do not have to speak up on podcasts like I do, like you do, but you cannot get help for a problem if you do not talk about it.
No, I definitely agree. It is one of those things that I feel like I'm going to use a word and I'm going to use it very strongly. I feel like mental health and everything that we've been talking about is a very taboo subject. You
Yes.
don't talk about it, regardless of, and it's like Dr. Claudia Black said, don't talk, don't tell, don't trust. All of those unstated and stated rules that we grew up with. And unfortunately, your husband's right. There's I used to be so afraid of talking about things, and ever since I started the podcast, it's like, well, how come? Why not make yourself, recover out loud. And so it took work for me to get to that point, like you do, and like where you're at. It took work for me to get there. Where no, I'm not gonna hold back just because somebody this, that, and the third. Like, hey, listen, that's their problem. That ain't got nothing to do with me. That's where my
Right.
head is at today. Where and it's so interesting because I went to I told you I had a Canadian story.
You did. I've
I
been
was
waiting
just
for it.
recently in Seattle. Yeah, right, right. All right. So I live in North Carolina. I just went to Seattle for a national conference. Freaking amazing time up there in Seattle. Well, my check into my Airbnb was like 4 o'clock or something like that. I forget, something like that. It was like 10 in the morning. I'm in Seattle, like nothing to do. And so I said, well, listen, why not drive up to Canada and see if you can go across the border? Now, mind you, I had my girlfriend on me that I always travel with, and I always check state and federal laws before I go anywhere before I travel. And then there was other things too I had on me that I didn't realize at that moment.
Mhm.
And so I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I know I'm legal anyways, just because you can get a temporary permit at 60 days just to cross the border, this, that, and the third, blah, blah, blah. Like I was doing my research, making the phone calls, all of that. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and roll up there and see what happens. Man, listen, I was scared to death. Scared to freaking death. Right? And so I walk up to I parked my car and I'm in Blaine, Washington at the border. And I park my car, walk up there to the border. I'm like, listen, boss lady, to the BSOs, y'all call them BSOs and we call them CBP. So I walked up to the BSO. She was amazing. Absolutely amazing. Nothing but respect for her. And I go to walk in the building. She was like, whoa, 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 stop. I need you to stay right there till I ask for you. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. First mistake, don't try to walk into the facility without permission. So I'm standing up there and I'm shaking I'm pure shaking, right? Like you can see, like I'm just doing this number right here. And she finally calls me. I'm like, listen, I never tried to cross, never had to cross, never wanted to cross, never needed to cross, but I'm up here 2 hours from the border. Why not try? I declared what I knew I had, right?
Okay.
Which is completely legal. So she was like, all right, well, get back in your car, pull on up, we'll do what we got to do. Man, listen, Canadian laws are so weird. CBD in the US is legal. It's considered a drug in Canada and is considered me transporting drugs across the border.
When was
Not to
this?
mention, this was about 2 weeks ago. No, 3 weeks
Really?
ago.
Really?
It's serious. Would not let me cross the border with none of that. 100%.
Maybe it's
100%.
because
It is.
which province were you going to? Because where is that
I was
one?
just over West Coast, southwest of Canada, up there by Blaine, Washington.
I gotta look it up because I never go west, so I don't know which province that one connects to.
And while you're looking that up, this right here is also considered a drug too, because it's 6
What is
milligrams
it?
per. It's nicotine pouches.
Oh,
It's 6 milligrams per nicotine per pouch, and per Canadian
out
law,
in
you transport.
BC. Oh, I'm surprised out in BC that would be.
Yep.
Because I can go up the street and go get me some CBD if I want to at a store.
No, 100. I know you can buy it, but you can't transport it
You
across
can't
the border
transport it
because it's
over.
considered a drug.
That is just so weird because if I can go up to the store and buy it, why can't? Okay, sorry, I did not know this. I believe you. I just
100%. My nicotine is considered a drug, transporting it across the border because it's 6 milligrams per pouch. You can transport up to 4 milligrams per pouch. Yeah, there was a lot of things that I learned at the border that they taught me. my piece, they wouldn't let me cross from my piece because it's prohibited in in Canada,
That one I
even
can.
though it's
That one I
legal.
would. That one I would assume you wouldn't be able to bring over. But
No, 100%.
the other stuff,
Yeah,
I'm just
I
shocked because
wanted
you could go up the street and buy it.
right, right. It was so interesting. And listen,
Yeah.
when you walk in those facilities, you can't walk out till they let you walk.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, but it was a great experience to try to go to Canada. But I appreciate the BSOs and the CBP. Nothing but respect for what they do. But it goes to show you that you know there are things that we might not know about people, right? And that we don't know, and we won't know until we try. And it's all about that encounter with the system. When do we feel safe? Do we feel heard? Do we feel understood? Are we believed? Are we going to get the help we need? Right. And so my encounter there taught me what I need to know if I want to cross the border into Canada. In I think they said 2 to 3 years I have to wait.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah. Well, I also got some other stuff I'm leaving off. I'm
Yeah,
considered a
yeah.
felon. I am considered a felon in the country of Canada,
Yeah,
and I'm
we
not a
don't want
felon
you
here.
up here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm being a jerk.
So
You seem
so
like a nice enough guy now, anyways.
right. But when I hear about your daughter, you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I hear about that, about your daughter seeking help in the system and I compared them, even my situation at the border, and we seek help, right? Like I was seeking help to get into Canada. Uh, but when we seek help, the system's response can determine the outcome and the future decisions that we make. And that is
Exactly.
a very critical first step, is how is our response when somebody reaches out for help? Are we dehumanizing? Are we harming? Are we hurting? Or are we taking the opposite route, and are we humanizing? Are we, you know, giving help where it needs to be provided to? And to put somebody
It's
in handcuffs at that age is just sickening and disheartening and
right.
depressing.
Yeah, I was blown away when she told me that. But luckily, she's very, like I said, she's very sweet. Actually, most days she doesn't like to believe she is, but she's actually a very sweet kid. It's her birthday on Tuesday. She's gonna be
Happy early birthday.
19, and that's a big deal in Canada because at 19 you can actually go to the bars.
Here in the US, you still have to be 21.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so where we live, just kind of a funny side, we live about 20 minutes from the Buffalo border or so. So my husband likes to joke. He goes, In Canada, we get 18th birthday is a big deal because now you can vote. 19 is a big deal because now you can go to the bars. 20 is a big deal because you're 20, right? You're in the twos, right? And then 21, around here, you just hop across the border because now you can drink there. So you get 4 big birthdays in a row.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that is so interesting. That is so interesting the way the Canadian culture works. That is because that's so not us here in the US for sure. So let me ask you then. All right. You said that you have your own experience with depression, suicide, things like that. So
yes.
let's start with I know we've been talking about suicide with myself, your daughter, and you
Mhm.
sharing her experience and y'all's experience with the system.
Yes.
What about your personal experience?
Yes. So it started way back in the day now. So I would say that my first my first
Back
kind
when I
of
was coming along, let me tell you.
right. My first exposure, I guess, to depression, which I didn't know this is what it was. Hindsight's 2020. I would say it was about 13, 14, right? You getting into those teenage years. And it wasn't until I was in college learning psychology and learning, I went, oh, that's what I was feeling. All right. But way back then, I had all sorts of thoughts of harming myself, of doing horrific things to myself. And I actually, at the time, I didn't know it's a coping strategy. But I used to write poetry about it. So instead of physically taking, say, a razor blade to myself, I would write about it and write about what it would look like or what it would feel like if I would do that. Um, which I'm like, wow, I'm so proud of myself for not even knowing that's a coping strategy to write, but apparently. um, so during that time, yeah, I had a lot of those thoughts, a lot of self doubt, a lot of self loathing, really, and just absolutely feeling like I don't belong, that I shouldn't be here, that nobody would miss me, all, the whole gamut of all the things. And then so as I grew, I went to college. I would say college, I didn't have too many depressive moments in college, which was nice because that's why I always like to say good days and bad days. Life is up and down. So college was pretty steadily not super depressed overall. And then into my 20s, it started rearing its lovely head again. Um, and so I had a lot more of those thoughts. And I can remember one day specifically, like, because it's a pivotal day. Um, I was at work, so I was working as an employment counselor, and I had gotten another phone call from my kid's school. She was, I want to say, it'd probably be about age 8 at this point, around there, because it was near her autism diagnosis, so in and around there. And they called me again. That they didn't know what to do with her. She was yelling and screaming in class. Little did we know she was having sensory overload. So again, hindsight's 2020. Um, but so I just had a breakdown, just total epic, awful breakdown at work. And I was like, you know what? Instead of going home, I'm going to go to that bridge. That's a great place to go right now. That is where I'm going. So between my house and my work, there was, I want to say, 4 bridges to have to go over because there's a canal all through this area. So there's all sorts of bridges. And I'm like, yeah. And you know which bridge I'm gonna go to? I'm gonna go to the one that most people don't go to because if I'm doing it, I don't want somebody else to see and try to save me. Well, that would defeat the purpose. Right. So I had this whole plan. This is what I was gonna do. And a coworker noticed that I looked off because a lot of times I feel like once you make that plan, once you're like, yeah, that's what I'm doing, it sounds stupid, but it's like relief. You're like, "You know what? It's all gonna be all done soon. It doesn't matter anymore. Nothing else it doesn't matter." So then you're like in this other weird kind of mode because it just doesn't matter. And so the coworker, she brought me into her office. She talks to me, Randy, like something is up. Talk to me, like, come on. And that's when I started crying and telling her, and she goes, I will drive you home. Like, no, absolutely. Obviously, I'm not going to let you go by yourself. And she's like, do you need something? Like, what do you need? What can I do to help you? And that was the most impactful statement because she wasn't giving me advice. She wasn't telling me what I should do or how I should think or how life could be worse or, all of the things that people try to say to make you feel better that never works. She said, what can I do for you? What do you need from me? You know? And so I ended up actually taking a leave of absence from work for about 3 months to kind of get things right. But that was such a pivotal moment. And because she responded in the way she did, it made me feel seen and heard and valued. And that made all the difference. And I want to point that out because that's what we were talking about earlier is people's responses when somebody is, and I wasn't necessarily asking for help, but I was, right? Like my emotions were clearly showing I needed help, even if my words weren't. So that's exactly what we were talking about. And her response made all the difference because she wasn't saying, oh, just buck up, just think happy thoughts. The sun is shining. It's fine. Right. It's people say that and think that they're helping and you are not at all. Um, so that was probably the most pivotal moment. I used my work's EAP, so the employee assistance program, had some short-term counseling. While I looked for another therapist to do like more of a long-term thing. And then, yeah, that's when I started going to therapy. I got on some antidepressants and lo and behold, here I am. Yay.
Wow. Well, yeah, it seems like you've come a long way since then. And it's interesting because I've never shared this with anybody, maybe one or two people, but not really many folks. And I love the way you explained it, where in that moment you had just made up your mind that, hey, I'm done. Like, and it's a sense of relief. I remember that was about so when I first got into recovery, first year was great. Oh my gosh, it was so phenomenal, so phenomenal. Year 2 through 5, I wanted to drink liquor and do dope every single day. I mean, it was just up here. It was miserable. I hated my life. I hated recovery. I hated it all. I'd wake up thinking about it, desiring it, freaking obsessing over it, and go to sleep. Same thing. Go to work. Just every second of the day, it was just there, 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 there. I mean, I was praying. I was, doing all this spiritual stuff that people were telling me, and it was just, ugh. I literally, I remember it was so strong and so powerful one night. Where I worked at, it wasn't Texas Roadhouse. It was called Texas Steakhouse. There's not very many
Oh,
of them around, and so they're very similar, but two different companies. And so I made the thought one night. I was working at Texas Steakhouse in Kinston, North Carolina, and right beside us was a gas station. And I said, you know what? Just F it, the hell with it. Get off work, I'm gonna go in and get me a big old bottle of damn alcohol, and I'ma just freaking just shut my brain up.
yeah.
And relief came just from kind of succumbing to that desire. Not I didn't drink because that's not because the beautiful part's coming up here in a second. I never drank, but that sense of relief just kind of like flooded over me. I quit obsessing over it because I'd made up my mind. You know what? F it. I'm gonna do it. Finished out my shift, went across the street, got gas, pack of cigarettes, cup of coffee, went home, and I wasn't thinking about it until after I got home or on the drive home. I'm like, dude, you done made up your mind to drink. Stop at the store, got everything you needed, and didn't even do it. Didn't even cross your mind.
Oh,
so so I love the fact that you shared that because so many people need to hear that, and so many people need to hear that story too of what I just shared because
yeah,
it might save them because they're so. I
exactly.
mean, just like your experience, my experience was the same except mine was alcohol and drugs.
Yeah,
It was the same exact experience almost.
yeah,
Sense of relief just poured over me, and it's sad. And so miracles do happen because this thing shows up, recovery and help shows up where we least expect it.
right, exactly. Oh, I love that. That was so beautiful. I was like hanging on to your every word. I love that story. And you know what I love most was that you said you hadn't shared it with too many people, and then you just shared it with me, so I feel really special. And now with
Oh, yeah.
the whole world, but me first.
Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, no, and as you were talking about struggling with these internal self dialogues, mm, you know, I think that's a very common theme in the mental health world. I think it is. These self-doubt, self-negative self-messages,
Mhm.
this overall negative viewpoint of ourselves.
Yes. There's that saying, right? We are our own worst self-critics, you know? We always we're always meaner to ourselves than when you ever would be to a friend. Because the things I tell myself, I would never tell my friend. Because that's just nasty and mean. And yet I tell myself. And I think a lot of people are similar in that way.
No,
So
100%.
yeah. So to kind of continue the story a little bit, because as you told me that your story, I was like, huh, I kind of ended, but like it's not over, right? Because that was still in my 20s. I'm in my late 30s now. Um and over the last decade, I would say, that's when I really embraced myself. I really decided F everybody else's opinion of me. Their opinion doesn't matter. My opinion of myself is what matters. Now, I did not come to this conclusion all by myself. I wish I could. Um, I paid a lot of money to come to that conclusion. So therapy. Um, and there's a couple things that like my therapist did, like exercises and stuff, that I still think about nowadays. And some of these things, like this one here, was one of the first things she taught me. One of the first things she did, I was telling her about all my self doubts and all that stuff, and she goes, "Okay, so where's your evidence?" So what? Well, where's your evidence that you're I can't remember exactly what it was. It was more of the feeling and vibes I remember. She's like, "Well, where's your evidence that that your boss isn't going to accept your time off request?" And I go, "I don't have any evidence of that." She goes, "So your boss has never denied it before?" "No." And she knows, like, things were kind of all crazy at the time. She was in. She knows the situation. Yes. So why do you believe that you're gonna leave her hanging and that you're a horrible person if you ask for this time off? I don't have a valid reason. And so that is one of the most impactful things she ever taught me. I mean, she taught me a bunch of other stuff, but I tell that story all the time to everyone who will listen, because when we are having those doubts about ourselves, if you stop and say, "Where is your evidence?" If you could not think of one piece of real evidence, feelings don't count. Show me feelings don't count for evidence. Real factual based evidence. Um, then you're lying because there's no evidence for it.
Most importantly, you're lying to yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. No, and it's interesting you share that because, when I was up there at the border, I've gotten more comfortable since being on the podcast with just being all over social media. And so I took a 2 week cross country tour from North Carolina to Seattle and came back a different way. All over social media, posting, sharing videos, live streaming the trip. Got pulled even on in Kansas and live stream me getting pulled. It was awesome. It was awesome. And so I couldn't live stream up there at the border. Uh, but I spoke about it and I shared my experience, with, you know, everything and, about the laws of Canada and what they were telling me and how I got turned around and went back to CBP. And somebody was like, "Kev, you need to stop bragging about getting busted at the border. You talking about carrying drugs. What do you mean drugs? Just that and the third." And I'm like, "Well, dude, it's my experience, right? Like, well, man, you're having people get all concerned and spread rumors, and your employer is going to be doing an investigation on you when you get back." And I'm like, "Okay, and I got nothing to hide." "But you were detained while you were up there. You were arrested and detained." I'm like, "Never arrested and detained." I said, "You can't leave the facility. That's different than being arrested and detained."
Right?
They're doing a search and seizure. I mean, a search of my vehicle. They might have to seize something. I can't leave because I am in their custody, which is federal custody. And as part of the protocol, as part of their regulations, like, and so he was telling me, "You need to be careful this." For what? Like, I'm gonna talk about it because I did nothing wrong. I broke no federal or state law, didn't even break Canadian law. I said per Canadian law, I could be transporting drugs across the border. Per Canadian law, I'm transporting a prohibited firearm across the border. Per Canadian law, I am a felon in the country of Canada. Per Canadian law, not per U.S. law.
Yeah.
Never said per you. I said per Canadian law. And I'm like, "So what? Let them do an investigation." But it's your
Yep.
job. It's your employer. I got nothing to hide. Like, don't silence me. Do not silence me. And too often than not, that showed me. that people who struggle with mental health, substance use, suicide prevention, suicide, and anything else, many other things that not mentioned in those three areas, people feel left out. They feel not heard. They feel they have no voice. And that's what suicidal tendencies do. That's what suicidal attempts do. That's what mental health does. It's what those negative self messages does. It says we have no voice. Says it says we have no voice. It says we we are not important. It says all of these things to us.
That is beautifully said. The one that really stood out was the "you are not important." I mean, all of the things were true, but that was the one that stood out to me when you were saying that. It tells you you are not important, and if you are being told you're not important, maybe not through words, but through the actions, and your brain is also already telling you you're not important. Based on what I said of where's your evidence, well, they were just given evidence now. So now your brain is telling you the truth. You're more likely to stay in that depressed mode or whatever you're doing and potentially do the things that you were thinking of, because now you have the evidence to back your thoughts that really are not factual, because that person was projecting their insecurities on you by giving you the vibes or the message that you are not important. Because for so long, for so many generations, people were taught this is the house's problem. This is family's problem. You do not talk about what's going on here, out there. And I feel like it's not until this past few years, really, like it slowly started to be talked about in the 2000s, but really it's not until we got more moving this direction in these last maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years, that people are actually talking about it and taking a stand and saying something needs to be done. It's relatively new, which means all of the people that are making the legislation, that are making the decisions, that are the practitioners, the ones doing the referrals, the ones taking the phone calls, they grew up with the shh, don't talk about it. Shh. That's a problem.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And there's so many things that I've always heard. Even growing up, I remember telling somebody, and I was wrong at the time. And at the time, I was also right. But I remember telling somebody, because there was this huge thing on race. Well, half and half. Uh, which ethnicity do I choose? And I said, well, at that time, knowing what I know now, if I knew then, my response would be different.
Yes.
And you'll get what I'm saying when I say it, though.
Yep.
But I remember I said, listen, I said, if you when you fill out these documentation, put that you are Caucasian because of this, that, and the third. And I had all the evidence to suggest otherwise, to suggest that, right? Like I had all the evidence, all the research, all the stats, everything to back it up. And I was confident in that. It wasn't until I was talking to one of my best friends, and he's a 69-year-old African American guy. He's actually one of the co-hosts of this podcast.
Oh, nice.
And I was telling him that, right? And I'm like, and he got a little butt hurt, and he said, but he challenged me. He's like, Kev, you telling somebody to deny a part of them. And I'm like, no, I was never doing that. Like, I never would do that. Just that and the third, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, Kev, think about what you said, though. And I sat back in my chair and that light bulb came off. And I'm like, oh my God. Dude, you are so right. I literally encouraged that person to deny themselves. And I didn't know that then. But
Yeah,
this was years later I was telling them, right?
of course.
And I am so grateful that I told that person that, because he taught me differently. He taught me a whole different perspective. And I'm like, wow, that is so beautiful.
I love that. I always like to say so um have these conversations with my mom all the time because she didn't know I was depressed as a teenager. And and now that she knows these things, and I'm very vocal about it, she's like, "Oh, I was such a bad mom." I go, "How? How were you? You didn't know. I didn't tell you. I hid it all." I'm like, and I said to her, like, just literally 5 minutes before we started recording, I go, "If you were a bad mom, would I be like, hey, mom, you just had your hip replaced, but you can come live with me?" She's like, "No." Like, exactly. Because you weren't. I hid it on purpose because I thought something was wrong with me. Granted, there was something wrong with me, but I thought there was more wrong with me than just my brain being a jerk. Um, but and so what I love to say is you do the best you can with the information you have at the time. And that's exactly what your story was. You did what you thought was right at the time with what you had. Now you've learned something new and you're like, hey, I would approach this differently. We can't go back in time and change stuff, but we can learn and continue to gather different knowledge and make changes for the future. And that is such a beautiful thing.
No, 100%. Absolutely. And it's all about, knowing, or making decisions based on what you know. And I think that it, at the end of the day, I think that regardless of what profession you work in, what your job title is, what your age is, at the end of the day, if you make, and maybe I might be naive when I say this, if you make the best decision that you potentially can to be the best person that you potentially can for that day, and things go wrong or mistakes are made, you still did your best. If you honestly gave an effort. And that's what helps me sleep at night, is that knowing I honestly give an effort today to do something and be a productive citizen of society. Because for so long I felt not a part of. I felt not heard, not loved. Did not like my physical self. I didn't like my body. I didn't like my own head. I didn't like the way I looked. I hated me. I hated
Yeah.
me. I ran from, people often ask, I didn't sink in to what I would say true depression or true anxiety. I chased drugs and alcohol for so long because it helped me to have a relationship with me. It helped me to be comfortable with me. Now, I experienced depression and anxiety. I think they were drug induced. And that's for me. And all this stuff going through my head, you're not a part of. Y'all just ended. Y'all just this. You're stupid. You're no good. Like all of these things that went through my head. I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to shut it down. I didn't know there was a solution to it, as you shared earlier. That hey, I have PTSD and I found a solution. I have depression and I found a solution. I have anxiety. I found a solution. And for me, right, like people ask, well, you joined the military and you did 3.5+ years or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I did that, but you don't even know why I did it. You don't know why I joined the military. I joined, because I thought to myself I needed discipline, which I did. I needed discipline, but I had my two sets of disciplines backwards. So I joined the military, failed successfully. And then I got the new type of discipline that I have today. And as I've been, I'm going to say a success because I haven't found it necessary to drink liquor or do drugs today. If I'd have had those two backwards, I would have been very successful in the military. And so I have a solution today to shut this up, to take this right here, what's between my two ears and my two temples, to take this right here when it's doing this, when that committee's going off, just to make that committee like that right there. and I can be comfortable with me. I have reduced significantly self-doubt. I have reduced significantly thoughts and feelings of depression, anxiety, you know, thoughts and feelings of wanting to escape self and not deal with me. I have significantly increased self-love. So you're absolutely right. Everything you shared, I identify with personally. Everything you shared.
Of that. And hopefully lots of other people are identifying with it too. That's why we do this, right? Bring awareness to help out all the things. But yeah, I would say like now as I went through therapy to learn to shut it up there. I like how you said the committee. Um there's so many skills that I was doing it to work through trauma, but I can now use it just on a regular basis. I can now look at a situation and be like, okay, wait. So one of the activities was how much of this was your responsibility. So we were talking about just like past trauma and how there if you were so my mom's ex-husband, he was an alcoholic, and there would be lots of yelling and screaming, and you never knew what you were going to walk into, and so it was kind of a disaster, right? So you didn't know. And I internalized a lot of the, "I'll go up to your room, go away," as, "Oh, I'm not wanted." But that's not what it was. So my therapist helped me change the way I viewed it. So when he'd be yelling and screaming, my mom would be like, "Go upstairs, go to your room." And I'd be like, "Oh, you don't care about me, you don't love me, whatever." My therapist helped me reframe that and go, "Wait a minute. She was protecting you. She was doing exactly what she should as a mom. She was doing the very best that she absolutely could." And I went, "Oh my gosh, you're right. I did." But when you are 13, you're 14, you can't process that information. You've got no idea about the grander scheme of things. Let's be real, teenagers are self-centered. But when my therapist is reframing, because if I was in that same situation and those were my kids, I would do the exact same thing. You want to protect them. So you want to take them out of the situation. Um, so that's something that now that I've learned how to reframe a situation and take responsibility for, what's my role in this? My role is that I needed to go to another room or whatever because that is the safer place to be. I can look at situations now and be like, wait, let's reframe this. Why is this? So I do this at work a lot because I answer the phone and sometimes people are not too nice. And so they'll be yelling and screaming at me because they think that they should have got something that they didn't actually pay for. And so they shouldn't have. Um, but I can reframe it because I'm not responsible for their attitude. They are. Maybe they're already having a really crappy day. And I'm just the person that broke the camel's back, right? I'm the straw that did it. And it makes me be able to talk to them and not be upset because in 2 minutes, I'm going to hang up the phone. I'm going to forget about you entirely. But in the moment, I used to, back in the day, before I worked through it in therapy, I'd be like, oh my gosh, because when you have that PTSD, you're put right back into the situation. So the heart starts going, you start getting like for me, the nervous, and I want to escape, but I can't because I'm at work. And what am I going to do? And I'm going to cry and all the things. But now they can yell at me. Not to say that I like it, but I can reframe it and go, they're having a bad day. They just are taking their frustrations out on me right now because they don't know what else to do. Maybe they just, I don't know, stub their toe even. I mean, that could be a really tragic thing depending on what's going on in your life. I say that because I just hit my toe. Um, but you don't know what's happening with them. So my responsibility is not to them, is not to their mood. My responsibility in that moment is to take care of myself, do my job to the best of my ability, ideally find a solution for them, but maybe I can't, and then move on with my day. And hopefully They can be responsible for their attitude and changing it. And um, a lot of times, if you talk back to somebody who is yelling and screaming, but you're talking back to them in a nice way, and you're like, I get it. This sucks. This is not ideal. A lot of times their temperature, let's say, their temperature goes down. And by the end of the conversation, a lot of times they're like, I'm sorry I yelled at you at the beginning, but I was just so upset. I get it. I get it. But as soon as you start to raise your voice back to them, no one has ever calmed down by telling them to calm down. Right? So as soon as you start to raise your voice, the temperature in the whole room goes up. So that is one of one of the biggest lessons I learned in therapy was to take a situation and try to look at it in a different way. And what am I responsible for? And what is that person responsible for?
No, 1,000% right. I couldn't agree more. And I think being a healthcare practitioner and teaching clinical skills has helped me to be a better person personally. Because I mean, there's so many things like even when I was up there at the border, right? Like for an example, I'm panicking, thinking I'm about to go to freaking jail, thinking I'm about to, serve some time, and
I
with
mean,
some
if you go to
public.
Canadian jail, you'll be fine. I don't know what American jail's like, but I mean, Canadian jail, you'll be fine.
Right, right. And so I'm literally I'm panicking. I mean my blood pressure is 250 plus. Of course, exaggeration here. And I was literally walking around the facility using grounding principles. How does the wall feel? How does the wall feel? Describe the wall. How does the air smell? Every time you step, how does the floor feel? How does your ankles roll? Oh,
Right?
yes, you know, and so I learned these skills and I teach them. And so when I have to practice them, it feels weird, but I'm like, at the end of the day, these folks was like, Kevin, you're okay. You're not in no trouble. You're okay. And I'm sitting there panicking. I am freaking out. I'm practicing grounding. I'm doing freaking trauma treatment.
But it works.
Right. Right. No, you're right. And it works because it keeps you from having a full blown panic attack and them having to call the ambulance to keeping you somewhat right here, kind of in the center lane a little bit. Probably more on the left or the right side, but that's okay. But you are right. And one of the things that came to my mind was the systemic response or the systematic response, right? The response that we get from the system is critical. Because you said that if you answer that phone, you can easily give them that same level back, and it'll make it worse. But do you want to nip it in the bud right now? If you can. I consider myself to be an expert in a couple of different areas, which is crisis management or crisis de-escalation, group therapy, and clinical assessments. And one of the things, and I say that not that I'm the best by any means, but uh, when it comes to dealing with crises, it's how do we how we respond to a situation can determine that person's also response back. I remember one time person was sitting there just escalated as all get out, and he was just going off, and I literally walked up to him as he was flipping out, and I said, "Hi, how you doing? My name's Kevin," and I stuck my hand out, and the guy literally snapped. I was like, "Well, my name is such and such.
Yeah.
Who are
Because they're
you?"
not expecting it. You throw them off and they're like, oh,
Right.
okay. Hi.
Right, and it's all about that human response. I gave a human response, and I humanized him by trying to shake his hand and
Yes.
identifying who I was, and he
Yes.
calmed down just like that.
I love that. I love that so much. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about all the times, that I'm talking to people and they're like, and I'm just like, okay, yeah. And I would love to help you. So can I just have like your name first? And as soon as, you know, somebody has to introduce themselves or say, it really does feel like, in and of itself, it's like a grounding technique because you're bringing them back to who they are. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's, a scientific grounding kind of thing, but I think it does just by life experience. I feel like when you bring them back into the moment of, hey, I just need your name, or say, I just need your phone number. I need to look up your file so we can be on the same page. Um, it really makes a big difference and it slow kind of calms the situation down.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it's important to, for everybody to understand that regardless of, it doesn't matter what role you're in, what position you're in, mental health related or not, how we respond is I think key. Do we want to humanize people or not? We're one of the only species that we cannot harm another of our species. Um, and we do harm another of our species when we dehumanize another person. And that is key there. That is key to understand because when we look at you and I right now, we're having a great time. We're having a conversation. Neither one of us are making threats. We're not calling each other other names, like all of those things. We're not threatening to go to each other's houses. None of that.
Well, I mean,
None.
you can't come to mine. So,
Right. Right. and and so part of what we're doing is we're humanizing one another. We
uh-huh.
are literally humanizing one another. And that makes the other person feel important, makes them feel heard, makes them feel loved, makes them feel accepted, makes them feel a part of the human herd. We're all a
Yes.
part of this human herd. And I think a lot of people forget that. And I don't know if they forget that or not. I don't know if that's the right term to use.
I
But a
think
lot of
maybe
people
at
do.
I think it's the right term. I mean, at times they forget it. Maybe not completely, but at times when you're heated, it's hard to think and remember everything.
You might be right. You might be right on that one. So as you were dealing with, or I shouldn't say the word dealing, but it fits. As you were dealing with your mental health, depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideations, did you feel humanized?
I'm going to say it depends on who I was talking to. It really makes a difference. Um, so like I said, that coworker that brought me in and said, "Hey, what do you need from me?" She talked to me like I'm human. She talked to me just like she would any other day. Um, I do remember people though going, and I said this example because this is literally what people say. But your life isn't that bad. Okay, cool. That's super helpful. Um, that gives me nothing to work with. And those are the kinds of comments that make me feel completely dehumanized because you're not seeing me. You're not seeing the struggle. You're not recognizing that something else is going on. You're just trying to make yourself feel better because you don't want to deal with this. And I get it. You don't have to deal with this, but then don't engage in the conversation. I have absolutely no problem with somebody saying, I can't right now because you don't know what's going on in their life. And that's fine. If you can't right now, if you cannot take on somebody else's energy, because I'm not going to say baggage, just their energy, because sometimes you have those vibes that are going on. That's fine. But you know what? In those moments, you might need that person just as much as they need you. And I feel like when we're talking about humanizing somebody, saying to them something like, that really sucks. To me, I love when people say that because that it makes me feel heard and seen. If I'm saying, oh my goodness, this is going on, this, and the other things going on, I don't need anything else than to somebody to wallow in it with me. Right? Not bring me down, not add to it, but just be like, that sucks. You want to get some coffee? You just want to sit here and chill? Like, yeah, we can just ride this out together. Might look better later. See how we're doing later. We're gonna be here. Because there's some times that you just don't need anything else. You just need to sit and stop. Stop trying to do more. Stop trying to make it better. Just stop and sit. And maybe try some of those grounding techniques that you were talking about, right? And when I'm sitting here and I'm going, yes, okay, when I sit like this and I feel the cushion and I lean back here and I feel the back and I'm just here. Those are the times that I feel most humanized. All those other comments or the looks people like to give you when you're out at the store, those are completely dehumanizing, and let's try not to do them, shall we?
Right. No, 100%. Definitely, would have to second you on all of that. Even during, some of my stuff, yeah, I mean, it would depend on the situation. Um, and then you would also have to mention this, that it also depended on how truthful I was.
Yes.
I,
Yes.
I remember getting diagnosed with by the state psychiatrist with bipolar disorder, manic or whatever, and I'm like, as I sit back and look at it now, I'm like, I really didn't tell him how much cocaine and meth I was using either.
Right. Yeah. You have to be honest for this to work. Very good point. Everything is very situational. And especially when you're talking about mental health, if you are not honest, there is no test to figure it out. I can't just draw my blood and be like, oh yes, you see here, you're very low on the happy blood. So that means you're depressed. Yeah, that's not a thing. Maybe one day, who knows, but not currently.
You are so right. Oh my God. It's, oh, when I work with families ask me, and this is the cool thing about, the mental health piece, the sad, but also interesting, because this is what sound like your daughter kind of had you and your family had a similar experience with your daughter. When I work with families, the question is, well, what is your diagnosis? What is this? What is that? What's going on? I can't give you a direct answer. I don't know what's going on. I can just tell you right now, we're treating the symptoms.
Yeah.
That's all I got for you. And you have to explain how mental health and substance use and everything else is not like you can just, let's throw in this blood pressure cuff and get a blood pressure of 250 over 60 or whatever. I don't know. Oh my God, you should be stroked out right now. You need to go to the doctor. You need to get over there to the ER right now. Or let's do a drug screen and see what drugs you're on, right? Or what you have taken in the last 72 hours. Or, let's give you this eye test and see what your eyesight is. Mental health and substance use and diagnosing of mental health, whether it be autism, depression, anxiety, it's not cut and dry. It's literally not cut and dry. And so when you're
Mhm.
running around trying to figure out, you know, what's going on with your daughter, how come this, how come that, how come this, how come that, unfortunately, that's the mental health and behavioral health system for you. Well,
Yeah.
maybe one day we can get a blood test and says, okay, yep, you got autism, here you go. Here, you got depression, here you go. Instead,
Yeah.
this is the symptoms. Let's treat the symptoms, and then medication might send you down spiraling, or it might send you into a manic state, or it might send you into a bipolar state, and so it's not a mood swing or whatever. I don't know. I mean, and I'm not an expert in the medicine piece of it, but yeah, no, you're right, and that's the sad part. That's one of the reasons
Mhm.
people struggle for so long, because nobody knows what's going on. Uh, Even you don't, and so you have to work through, and it takes time to get the accurate diagnosis.
Exactly. And then once you have the accurate diagnosis, if medication is what's right for you, it can take a lot of time before you find the right one. And that in and of itself can be quite the struggle. I mean, you had quite the experience with one medication that didn't go well, right? So like it can take a toll. And I know for my kid when she was younger, they had her on an anti-anxiety and it made her much worse. And they had her on some other different things that didn't work and didn't work. So she got to the point that she's like, I don't want to try anymore. I don't want to try anymore. And I said, okay, like I don't know what to, none of them have helped. So I get it that this is a struggle. You're taking stuff and you're feeling all out of whack more than without them. Um, she eventually did say that she wanted to try something else again because things were just so bad. But there was a few years of it. She's like, no, I can't. Just can't do it. Um, so luckily, when she wanted to try again, it worked. But it can be a big struggle to find the one that's going to work for the person, providing you got the right diagnosis first.
Right. And that's and that's key. And you might run into and and people listening, let me just share this, okay? And I think this might be what some of your experience was too personally, and with yourself or with your daughter, is you might run into a diagnosis, and it could be the wrong diagnosis, right?
Mhm.
But remember, we're treating the symptoms, and so we'll prescribe medication that addresses those symptoms, and that medication might make other symptoms skyrocket, down spiral, manic, whatever, right? Skyrocket, get worse, whichever phrase you want to use. And then you have to go in there for reassessment, and then you might get the right diagnosis then because of new symptoms. And then you might get additional medication based on a new diagnosis or what have you. I've seen that more times than I can count too, especially when it's a first mental health episode of any sort, regardless
Yeah.
of. Um, and so I think that's key to really point out too, is because I know we're talking about a lot of things here, with it, with mental health, personal and professional here, on both sides of the aisle here, but that's also another aspect to pay attention to, um, because I think a lot of people do get frustrated. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I got to go back to the doctor again. Oh my gosh, the new behaviors are just getting worse. And she's never done this before. He's never done this. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
really? And it's just really about ready to pull out my hair.
Yes, 100%, yes. We've experienced different things like that. I remember her first diagnosis was ADHD, and so they put her on ADHD pills. Oh my gosh, it was honestly like living with a little demon because it made her it sounds so horrible, but it was. So you'd go and you'd be like, "Oh, hey, dude." And, like, literally, that's the response I would get. And I'm like, okay, this is not working. So yeah, you have to keep going back and advocating, and it is a process. That is for sure.
No, absolutely. So let me ask you then, what, when did you realize that you needed to stabilize out or that it was time to seek help? And what does some of that process look like for you? Was it like a kind of a copy and paste experience? Was it cut and dry, or was it more of, let's go in there and kind of go through this process and one thing right after another? Wasn't cut and paste, wasn't cut and dry at
Yeah.
all.
So for myself, I would say I knew I needed help that pivotal day I was talking about before, um, where I had made my plan. Um, that was the moment I knew I needed help because, and I think this is very similar to most people that have suicidal ideation. We don't actually want to die. That's not usually the actual end goal. The end goal is to just make it stop, to just have the pain or the nothingness or the whatever stop. It's not to not exist anymore. And so that day was the day that I was like, yeah, I guess I do need some help. Because I didn't want to actually die, but that was what was going to happen. Um, and so, yeah, I reached out to my EAP, but the problem is with an employee assistance program, they only do like short term stuff, like whatever your problem is in this moment, that's what we can talk about. But when the problems have been happening for a long period, or there's multiple, or there's layers, which most people have, um, those programs aren't super helpful. Um, they are helpful in the short term because you can usually get assistance quite quickly to at least get you over like the immediate crisis. But then you do need to seek help for the longer term effects. And that is pretty much exactly what I did. It was okay, I got it. The short term fix. I'm not going to kill myself now, but now I need a much longer term solution. And that is when I went, start Googling different therapists and found one that I clicked with because that's another really important thing. If you don't click with your therapist, it's not going to work. There are some not great ones out there, and there are some fabulous ones out there. So um, I'm lucky. I really like someone that I got. She was awesome. And I did therapy on and off for a decade, because it's not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. It is not free in Canada. It is quite expensive. And so I used up my work benefits and I paid some out of pocket, and then I would take a break until I could afford to do it again. Um, and it was nice though to know that even if I wasn't going to therapy for a period of time, it was nice to know that if I needed something, I already had a therapist I could call and make an appointment. I didn't have to look for somebody else because I had one who knew the situation. Um, and that I think makes a big difference too, because it's hard to find one to begin with, especially like I said, when you click with. If you, go 6 months or a year without going and you're like, oh, I need to go back to therapy, and that person is gone, that makes the process that much more difficult because now you're repeating yourself to this whole new person, hoping that you click with them. So I feel very blessed and lucky that I did not have to do that. Um, 'Cause yeah, when I was like, "Oh, I need to go back to therapy, like something is wrong again," in my mid-30s, then I was able to do that and kind of not restart, but well, restart the process, but not from the beginning, right? Like we could jump into the middle of it, which was really nice. Um, so I think it was pretty like I feel like I was really lucky on my journey once I decided to seek help. Because I've heard some stories on my show where they are not as lucky and they go through multiple therapists before they find one that really listens to them. So I think, yeah, I was definitely very lucky with finding the one that I had. And then I talked to my family doctor and got me on antidepressants. And again, super lucky. The only thing we had to fiddle with was the dosage, but it was the right like it works for me. So very lucky there that I didn't have to go through multiple medications. Just we kind of played with the dosage a little bit. Um, yeah, lucky, but it's not always that easy. But it's worth it.
Definitely would concur with you on that. You mentioned something that reminded me of my experience with my own therapy, and I always knew as a therapist, you and your patient's supposed to click, and they call it this beautiful thing, um, therapeutic rapport or therapeutic
Yes.
relationship. That's what they call it. And I remember I got connected with my therapist and freaking fell in love with her. She's absolutely amazing. And I keep talking trash to her because I'm like, you won't never show up on my podcast. And she's like, Kevin, now you know it is unethical for me to show up on your podcast. And I'm like, ain't nobody going to know but you and I. And of course, the world. I mean, don't nobody really need to know that I'm your patient, right? But long story short, I remember going through using EAP for my current employer, and they pulled me up in the system. I didn't know that I was in their system, and I'm like, "Well, shoot, if I'm already in your system from such and such year," I'm like, just send the referral to my current therapist, to the lady y'all sent it to before. And they were like, to such and such. I said, 100%, absolutely, send it straight to her. And they literally sent the referral on straight to her, and I was able to use EAP. I can use EAP anytime I want. But as I spoke to her about it, I don't want to get hit with fraud with EAP, so I want to kind of use my EAP, then pay, use, then pay, use, then pay.
Yeah.
Just because EAP, I mean, yeah, I get it. It's a service there, but one of those things that I don't want to do is use a service when it's not technically needed. I mean, could I use a financial benefit? 100%. I mean, it's there. Use it. Dude, like anybody,
Right.
you have EAP, use it. I used mine twice this year, and I went to go use it a third time, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just cancel it and pay for it out of pocket till next year. Right. And
Right.
that's just because of my personal beliefs and my personal ideas. Because again, I don't want to get hit with fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's rare instance for you to get hit with fraud with EAP. It's a rare instance. I just don't want my job or my employer to say, "Oh, Kevin, how is your finances looking?" And when I can pay for it versus, this, that, and the
Yeah.
third. Now, I share that to share this. EAP is important, very critically
Mm-hmm.
important. But I called my insurance up. This is before the EAP. I'm like, hey, uh, I'm really needing a therapist. I want to know if I can get y'all to do what is called a basically it's a case agreement. Okay. And a
Okay.
case agreement, for anybody who doesn't know, your medical provider or clinical provider might not be paneled with your insurance.
Hmm.
Most insurances will do case agreements. It's as simple as that. That case agreement says that we will basically panel your medical clinical provider uh, while you were in therapy or while you were seeking this help, right? And then, and again, it's called case agreement. So ask your insurance, if you do have it, about case agreements. Not all of them do it, but a lot of them do. And so mine don't. They were like, yeah, we can get you set up with a therapist, this, that, and third. I'm like, well, listen, y'all pay for telehealth services. Why not go ahead and give a case agreement for this? They were trying me so badly to get me set up with a different therapist, this, that, and the third. And I literally told them, I said, no, I'm not
Hmm.
going to go to a different therapist. Like, I've been with the same therapist for like thousands of years now. I'm not going to go retail.
Oh, well, good for your age.
Right. I know. Thank you. I got a beautiful physique. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. uh, but uh, like, why am I going to change,
Mm-hmm.
a therapist because you want me to, because you don't want to pay for telehealth services for me to talk to my therapist? And the only difference between using my insurance for therapy versus paying my therapist out of pocket is about 25 bucks difference.
Oh, jeez.
Right. Because my therapist does also, this is another thing to ask your therapist. Okay. Sliding fee scale.
Yes.
Ask your provider about a sliding fee scale. A lot of providers don't do it. A lot of them do. So if you're struggling, again, it's another resource for you to
Mm-hmm.
tap into, especially financial resource. Utilize your resources, folks. But
Yes.
mine gives me a sliding fee scale. I done got tongue twisted on that one. I apologize.
It's a mouthful, all
And
right?
so it's 20, right? Yeah, no, 100%. And so it is $25 difference. So I literally told my insurance, the heck with you. I ain't gonna use you. If you don't want to do a case agreement with my therapist,
Yeah.
why am I going to use my insurance to go through y'all to get to another therapist when mine works just well for me? She
Yeah.
knows me. She doesn't have, you know, like mine knows me pretty well now that they that that if I have an appointment I ain't paid right yet, they would she will literally text me or send me that pay reminder to to pay her so I can keep my appointment the next day. Because I will go a whole month without paying her until the until my appointment, and I'm like, oh shoot, my bad.
Right? It's not that I am not going to pay you, but there's a lot going on.
Right, right. And so, but when you have that therapist and you click with that therapist or you click with that provider, that is important. And I
Yes.
love the fact that it's not coming from a therapist this time, but it's coming from somebody such as yourself who is currently in therapy and who also talked about the difference or the importance of,
Yeah.
clicking with a therapist.
Yeah. Makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. 1000%. So listen, we've been on here for about an hour and 36 minutes.
I know. We are quite the talky, chatty people, eh?
Right? So I have to get hooked up on your podcast for sure.
I think so. I think this is a good vibe. So we got to do it.
Yeah, no, 1000%. So listen, if there's anybody, I'm gonna ask you the most important question.
All right.
Probably actually a couple of them. If there's anybody who's listening or watching, what is one thing that you want them to take away?
Not to believe everything you think. You asked me for one thing, so I stopped. It's lots of things, but you asked me for one.
Okay. And what now, now, I love it. I love that. I'm gonna give you an open-ended question this time.
All right.
What is what is your call to action?
To start speaking honestly. So something I end my show with, the Ride or Die show, if anyone's wondering. Something I end my show with is I always tell people that the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Being open and honest isn't just about ending the stigma. It is about helping yourself as well. If y- and we talked about this when you were talking about how you're diagnosed bipolar, but you didn't tell them all the meth you did. Well, that's why we have to be open and honest. If you are truly in a place that you feel you need help, please be open to that help. And when you go to that help, be honest with that person because they cannot help you if you're not honest. And that is a huge ask. It sounds really easy, but it's a huge ask because it's not just, hey, my arm hurts. I'm being honest that this is the spot that hurts. You need to lay bare your innermost thoughts. And some of those thoughts might be absolutely horrific to let somebody know, but they cannot help you if you are not honest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Now, if somebody wanted to reach out and be a guest on your podcast or have you be a guest on their podcast, maybe even
Yes.
have you do a speaking engagement, maybe even have you do some mentoring, um, or maybe, do a poem for them, do some authorship for them or or something like that, or anything. Reach out to you, maybe
Yes.
just for somebody to talk to and and have that trusted, you know, confidant. How would they contact you?
So everything is on my website on rbwriting.ca. For being a guest on others' podcasts, speaking engagements, stuff like that, you'd go through my publicist, who is Mickey at Creative Edge. But his info is also on my website, rbwriting.ca. Um, and I mean, you can follow me on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, just my name, Randi-lee Bowslaugh, and you'll find me. And YouTube, because my show. And if you want to be on my show, those are also the best ways to reach out to me and say, "Hey, I heard you talking on the One Moment podcast, and I think I got some stuff to say." So, because my podcast is very similar to this one, um, we talk about people's journeys with mental health, and so it's called the Ride or Die Show. You can watch it on YouTube, listen to it on all the things. Um, But yeah, if you search my name, I am like the first 4 pages of Google. So just Randi-lee Bowslaugh, and you will find lots about me.
I love it. I love your energy. I love your energy. Oh gosh, we have been just like fired back and forth and clicking
Mhm.
the whole time. Wow. Now, if somebody wanted to purchase any of your literature or anything of that sort, where could they find that at?
So again, all the links are on my website, rbwriting.ca or Amazon. It would be the easiest way to do it. Again, if you just type in my name on Amazon, I'm the only one. I used to be really annoyed at my mom for giving me the name Randy because Randy's a boy's name. Um, but Randi-lee Bowslaugh is a unique name, and now I love it because nobody else has it. So if you type that into Amazon, you'll get all my books will come up.
Mm. Listen, it's been an absolute privilege and honor. Thank you for being on today. Thank you for the amazing, heartfelt, honest conversations that we've had. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, we definitely
Abs-
gotta come on my show.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yes.